Hello, and welcome to Tech and Learning Future-Proofing Your District Plan Conference. A special thank you to our sponsors Catch-On, Classcraft, FileWave, Global Teletherapy, GradeCam, Sanford Programs, and thank you to all our association partners. Today's virtual conference is focused on taking the lessons learned from current remote learning programs to create long-term plans that support effective teaching and learning both online and in person. I want to remind everyone to log into the Conference Hub using the link sent in your confirmation email. Once you are logged in, you can visit a sponsor booth to learn about their offerings and book a meeting or live chat with them. See your personalized agenda. Network with over 1,000 of today's attendees via the registrant directory and chat features. Access all of the conference resources in the download section. And win prizes. Throughout the Conference Hub, you will find several buttons to enter yourself into a passport to prizes. Please visit all the pages using the navigation bar on top of the page. Every time you find a button and fill out the form, you will earn one entry into the raffle. All entries are eligible for a series of prize drawings, only one prize per participant. You can enter once for every button you find. We will announce winners via email at the end of the conference. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions for the presenters during the webinars, please submit them through the Zoom chat. Please know we capture all questions and our presenters are happy to answer them as time permits. Today's slides and additional resources are available and can be accessed in the Downloads tab of the Conference Hub. We encourage you to download any resources that you may find useful. Be sure to use the conference hashtag #TLTechLive in social posts. Please join me in thanking our terrific speakers, and I also want to thank you for joining us today. Please join me in welcoming our presenter, Dr. Kecia Ray.
Hi, everybody. Yes, you made it. So glad you're here. And I feel like the 31 folks who are still hanging in with me should get some kind of a treat. I'm not 100% sure what that treat's going to be, but I definitely feel like you deserve a treat. You've been in with us all day long, and it means a lot for you to be here. So this session is on models and research. And I'm going to kind of go through some models, and I'm going to spend some time in research, and I'm going to hopefully leave some room at the end for questions, but it might not take all of the 45 minutes. So let me, without further ado, turn on my little screen share. Can everybody see my screen? You know I depend on chat, so you guys let me know if you can see it. Okay, good. Thank you, Bernie. Bernie's my buddy. He's been here like all day. Appreciate you so much. Okay, so let me get it going. Play from current slide. All right, so if you've been in, oh my gosh, poor Bernie. Bernie says it's 6 a.m. his time. Wow, you got up early for us. That's amazing. We love you. If you've been in some of my other sessions, then you've seen this, which is the Horn and Staker framework for blended learning. And essentially what this framework denotes is the move from face-to-face instruction to online instruction with blended learning and the models that you can put into practice when you're on that continuum. So on the far left, well, my left when I'm looking at the screen, you can see most of the interaction between face-to-face and online. And then on the online, on the right side, that's pretty much all going to be in the online virtual space. On the brick and mortar and online side, there are two models that are really dominant, the rotation model and the flex model. The flex model is pretty much what we have been operating in this phase of remote learning that we've been in. And the rotation model is what we typically see in school classrooms when we are seeing station rotation, lab rotation, or flipped classroom model, or an individual rotation model, which is where students decide that they want to go, like, let's say you have a computer station in your classroom and students can really walk over there and log in and do, work on the computer. That would be like an individual rotation model. So we've really been living in the flex model over these past several months. And what we want to talk about is how we can kind of move across this continuum as we plan for what learning is going to be looking like next year. And what I mean by that is when we're considering teaching and learning in this environment, this, let's just call it a new normal, not knowing what the future is going to hold and not knowing when that vaccine is going to come out and all those little dynamics, the best scenario that we've talked about pretty much all day is embracing this blended environment and this blended framework and designing an instructional model that adds these three things that you see kind of way over here on the right, on the left. And that is responsive, cultural responsiveness, responsive to the social, emotional needs of the learners and the teachers, quite frankly. You want to be inclusive. We have to be inclusive today like we've never been before. Under this traditional framework for blended learning, even with the hybrid zone, the special ed might be a push-in, might be a pull-out, so those children might be coming in and out of the classroom on a daily basis. Could be a co-teaching scenario, but that all kind of turns upside down when we move to this remote environment and this mostly online environment, the flex model. So it has to be inclusive. We have to think about special populations. We have to think about our special needs children and our EL children and how we go about taking care of those students in this model. And for the reasons of having to attend to responsiveness and the inclusive practices, it has to be dynamic. We have to think about how dynamic the model is and how we modify and adjust on almost a day-to-day basis of how we're teaching. We have to hear from our students. The panel that I just had previous to this, the teachers said, on Fridays I have one-to-ones and I get to listen to what my students need, and then I create my lessons accordingly. And I may have more synchronous time if I need it. I may have more asynchronous time if I feel like they're kind of doing okay. So has to be dynamic, has to be responsive, has to be inclusive. And I am calling this model, and I've kind of thought it through with a friend of mine, Linda Chen, who's the Chief Academic Officer of New York City Department of Ed. We're calling this model the enhanced hybrid, which means we're embracing the framework of the Horn and Staker blended learning, but we're adding these three things on the side to kind of enhance that framework and pretty much call out that you have to attend to this. You can't just not pay attention to these things in this model going forward. Yeah, that's right, Jordan. Go NYCDOE. They're awesome. So the model that we use for pedagogy, for blended learning teaching, is the TPAC model. You're probably very familiar with this, but essentially it is, taking the content knowledge that you have, and you have a lot because you've been teaching and you know your content areas, applying the technology integration that you've acquired, either that you've acquired recently or that you've had all along the way, and then applying it to your pedagogical knowledge. So how you teach, and especially the new way that you've learned to teach in the most recent weeks. When you combine all of those three things together, you've got that secret sauce in the middle of TPAC. And when you take your content, use technology, apply your teaching practices to it, then it's magic. It's like magic dust. And it also is what we hope to see in blended learning. This is just a little bit more descriptive definition of the different models, especially in the hybrid the hybrid section that I talked about. You've got rotation. Typically that's going to be station or lab rotation models. And those are going to be very dependent on a digital platform, but they're going to allow time and space for teacher-directed lesson. You face to face. That's where we thrive, right? That's what we love to do. Is you teach, and you're going to have digital tools, so it's technology integration, but you're going to be doing direct instruction. Virtual and online is where we're going to see students pretty much only online. And in that environment, you might have a teacher, you should have a teacher, moderating whether the students are logging in and what their behaviors are and what their assessments are. And they may do some remediation and some enrichment, but they are not necessarily going to have any real face-to-face time. There is a model called enriched virtual, there's an enriched virtual model, and there's also what they refer to as a blended virtual model, and that is where they bring them in face-to-face for 1 or 2 days a week, and they have them come to school, come to a physical building and get enrichment, or socialization, or remediation in some instances if they're not logging in like they should. The self-blend model is typically what you see when you have a virtual school and you have students who can enroll in that virtual school. So they may be in high school, a traditional high school, but they're enrolling in a virtual school to get a credit. And that credit is usually a credit they can't get in their traditional school, or their schedule couldn't work out. So they're deciding by themselves, possibly with a counselor, that this is a better option for them. And then I've already talked about the flex. And again, that is what we're living the dream, living that today. Tina wants to know, what's the name of the blended model or approach you based enhanced? Oh, so what I did for the enhanced hybrid is I looked at the whole framework, and I essentially said, let me go back. Hopefully I can go back. What I basically said is this entire framework is all the models of blended learning. The hybrid models of blended learning are in the face-to-face and online learning realm, and those are going to be your rotation and your flex models predominantly. The enhanced hybrid is taking everything in the blended learning framework, all of those models, and saying you have to attend to responsiveness, you have to attend to inclusive practices, and you have to be dynamic between the models in order to take care of the way we have to do school today, right? This framework and these models were based on having a physical location that everybody went to, and then extending the school day using the technology. We've kind of turned that on its head now, and the school day is in the technology, but now we have to think about how we take care of the needs of our students. So yeah, the enhanced model is all of that's kind of why I picked the word enhanced, because it's all of the models, but adding responsive nature, attending to cultural responsiveness, social emotional learning responsiveness, the inclusive practices, and then being dynamic between the models. In the traditional thinking of blended learning, you pick a model like station rotation and you stick with that. What I'm suggesting with an enhanced hybrid is you can't do that. You got to be able to move in between the different models depending on what your needs are, because your needs are going to vary widely in our new education ecosystem. Hopefully, Tina and Jordan, that helps you with it, but I'm happy to come back to that because I just put this out this week. Today's the first day I've put that slide out, and I've been thinking about it for a very long time. So any feedback is super helpful. I know I've got to improve that graphic. I can tell you that, because it's confusing to a lot of people. So this is a graphic that came out by Michigan Virtual, and they have a phenomenal research division, and my friend Catherine Kennedy was in that division for many, many years. And this is her visual, and it just shows the dimensions of blended learning models. So it kind of like what I was talking about with the hybrid, where you can pick different ways that you're going to manage time. It can be a fixed daily schedule, like the people in the session before Palm Beach we're talking about. Those two teachers had a fixed daily schedule. It can be a modified schedule. You're going to come 2 days, and the other 3 days you can do asynchronous. Or it can be open entry, and that's really totally asynchronous, where kids come in and out, and they schedule office hours as they need. And then depending on that dictates the teacher role and the student role, and the support that the student has. So it's a whole dimension of blended learning that you can move across with the with the possibility of it being so independent that a student and a teacher are never really in close proximity to one another in a physical space, either virtually in a physical space or physically in a physical space. So a tremendous amount of flexibility with these models, which means, I put this in here to say, you can turn this into whatever you need to turn it into. You have some work to lean into. There is a continuum from face-to-face to completely online that you have the flexibility to move across. The continuum is dependent on is a learning platform. So if you have a learning platform that enables you to log in and get access to all your lessons and all your material, then you are prime for being able to implement this kind of blended learning. And when if your kids get to come back in the fall, then they come back and you say, log into Schoology, Google Classroom, Blackboard, Desire to Learn, Canvas, pick your pleasure, and click on lesson 2. And then when they're at home, this same directions apply. So there's consistency and structure in the delivery of the instruction, and there's consistency and structure in the formatting, like the way you're doing lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. You have to have that. That's called instructional design. That's a piece of instructional design. But you have to have that so that the students know what's expected of them and so that they can follow the instruction. If you have that learning platform with that kind of consistency in your instructional design, then they'll roll with it. And they'll roll with it whether they're getting to come in person or whether they have to be online. And the other thing that allows you to do is when you do have that precious time with them in person, which now will become a lot more precious than we ever thought of, right? Then you use that for intervention, for social emotional learning, for project-based learning, for small and whole group instruction, although you can do small and whole group instruction like we're doing right now through video conferencing. It's kind of hard to do project-based learning this way. It's a lot easier to do it when you're physically in proximity to one another. But I have seen some phenomenal teachers that have actually done great work with project-based learning in this synchronous environment with their kids all in a video conference mode. The face-to-face and online is that connection with using the technology to make the connection. And it's also using the technology to have access to the content. So that's super important. And then you're going to collect data from that. And that data is going to help inform where the kids are on their mastery and what you need to do with your instruction to modify so that the next day you can attend to either enrichment, enhancement, remediation, kinds of activities. And then of course we've talked about online, but online is predominantly going to be an asynchronous setting with it, which is self-paced. It's still collecting data, but it is it's moving in an asynchronous way, allowing the students to kind of move at their own pace. Blended learning process is something I created probably 10 or 15 years ago, and it's basically the things that you need to consider when you're developing blended learning classrooms and content. The teacher always needs to be super clear and super precise with their directions and what their expectations are and what the outcomes are, like what they expect the students to be able to do by the time they finish an activity. That's really important. The student is at the center, but the student has to know what you want in order for them to understand and actually do the activity. So clear directions. The other thing that I would suggest is with those directions is you have to, when you're in an online environment, you have to be able to anticipate almost everything the student's going to ask and then put the answer out there for the student before they ask the question. That's not as easy as it sounds. So there needs to be a lot of time given when you're planning instruction around around anything, but definitely for virtual or blended classrooms. Formative assessments, you want them to give you good feedback. You want them to be reflective in nature. You would love for the kids to be able to have access to their own data so that they can look and see what they did, how they performed and what they needed to do to improve. And you want to be outcome driven. So you can use NWEA, you can use any of your regular traditional blended or formative assessments in blended learning. You would just want them to be hopefully connected to your learning platform in some form or fashion. You're going to use computer mediated instruction. You hope it's going to be adaptive, diagnostic, and provide practice. At least needs to do two of those things. And you can use that as a center. You can do centers, in a virtual environment too. You can say, I'm going to meet during this block of time. I'm going to meet with 4 kids. I want this group of kids needs to be outside, creating an obstacle course. This group of kids needs to be logging into iReady or Dreambox, the computer mediated things. And then this group of kids is going to log into Zoom or Teams or Google Hangout or whatever to meet with me for small group instruction. And you can do that right now when you're in a virtual environment. That's very possible. The teachers just before basically described that as what they were doing. Kelly wanted to know computer mediate, and I kind of get through some out. It would be iReady, Dreambox, iStation, Edmentum. All of those are Read 180, System 44. All of those are computer mediated instruction. Flexible learning space is something else you need to consider in our current state. When is it appropriate to do a video conference session? When is it appropriate for it to be them logging into a tool? When is it appropriate for them to be getting out a piece of paper and doing some old-fashioned manipulative work? I'm working with some companies to provide some kits. Homeschool and virtual schools do this already, but it's probably going to be something that we're going to do with traditional schools, and that is provide learning kits that go home to the families, and kids can pull manipulatives out of those kits and operate, use those manipulatives for a learning activity during the day at home. So again, this is stuff that's actually been done before. It's just been done in a homeschool or virtual school environment, and we're kind of bringing it into what a more traditional school environment. So now we're going to talk about research, one of my favorite things to talk about. Oh no, I knew this was going to happen. Yep, only amount of time before my PowerPoint just said, you know what, Kecia, it's not happening. Okay, there we go. Now it thinks, let me enable the media. Oh my gosh, now I'm going to be in the spiral. Hold up, my friends. Okay, so we're going to watch a short video on blended learning research, and then in the chat box, I would love for you to share your thoughts on how this research supports what we could be doing with blended learning. So let me get to my video, and here we go.
A new report from REL Central provides a summary of the methodology, measures, and findings of research that examined K-12 online and blended learning programs that were used to support differentiated instruction. The report also summarizes the characteristics of the online and blended learning programs. Researchers searched 4 databases using a variety of search terms to locate research investigating K-12 online and blended learning programs. Studies were only included if it was clear the online and blended learning programs were used to support differentiated instruction and examine program impacts on student academic achievement. A total of 17 studies examining 14 online and blended learning programs were identified and included in this report. The online and blended learning programs were classified according to the type of differentiation available in the online and in-class components of the programs. The online portion of the programs allowed students to progress through the content at their own pace, provided teacher-directed differentiation of the online content, and/or used adaptive software to support differentiation. Of the 17 studies examined, statistically significant positive effects were found for 4 blended learning programs. For more information and access to summary of research on online and blended learning programs that offer differentiated learning options, please visit these websites. Thank you.
All right, excellente. Now this PowerPoint's going to be the bane of my existence today. All right, so in the chat, Tina, I'll get those websites to you. It's the REL website. Actually, it's in my chat earlier. Maybe Marie, can you go back up in the chat from earlier today and find that website and stick it into this part of the chat? Do you mind doing that for me? My friend Marie she's my behind the scenes girl. So put in the chat box, how do you think you can apply this research to your work as you're starting to plan for next year? Are you even looking at research as you're beginning to plan for next year? And I know I don't mean that in a mean or disrespectful way. Sometimes we just like get going, feet first because we have to, because we've been directed to, because we're getting pressure. There's 1,000 reasons we move feet first, but I'm just wondering how many of you might be thinking about what the research is saying. Okay, good. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff going on in Asia and Europe, and Australia has got some really phenomenal stuff going on too. I figured out what my treat is going to be for you guys. I mean, it's kind of the best I can do since we're all virtual, but my little baby, my little 10-month-old baby is going to come in here at the very end for you to see her and say hello to y'all. And I can't wait for you to meet her. She's awesome. And she's the reason I left the school district, so I could have her. Had to retire to have a baby. Oh, now I want to talk through, these are some studies that I'm going to have to exit out because I need to see my notes. Are y'all still good? Can you still see me? Yes, okay. You're going to get this. You're going to get this PowerPoint, but and these notes are in it, and there's links that you can see that go to each of these studies. So these are my favorite studies. So they're a little dated because nothing has come out recently that's like really flipped my lid around blended or online learning, and I have been looking. So as soon as it does, I'll let you know. There's kind of been a lull, quite frankly, in blended, and a move towards project-based research, project-based learning and SEL research in our little research communities. But these are my favorite. Evaluation of evidence-based practices in online learning, a meta-analysis. This came out in, I want to say 2013. No, 2010. So it is super old. But it's a meta-analysis. So what's important to me with this study is it grounds you in kind of the history of blended learning and where in online learning and where it started, especially if you're thinking about that right side of the model that's speaking specifically to the online side of it. This gives you a really good idea of where it started with online and how it kind of morphed into blended. And it takes you kind of back to the origins of that work. This next study, Mean What You Say, Defining and Integrating, this is 2013, and this provides a tremendous amount of clarification around competency-based, personalized learning, and blended learning, and what is different about each of those things. And I play a video in another session where Heather Staker is saying, blended learning gives you the chance to personalize, which it does, but it is not personalized learning. That is different. That is Kathleen McCluskey and Barbara Ray's work and other people, but they kind of kicked it off many, many years ago as a term. The Blended Learning Report, 2014. I love that one because it looks at 13 schools. They are charter schools, and a lot of this research is around charter school work because the charter schools were the ones that could pick it up and move with it in a very quick way. And it took those of us in traditional schools a lot longer to get this up and running. But it does show the teacher side of it, the teacher adoption side of it. And it's a really good study to look at when you're thinking about how all of this applies to the work of the teacher. Personalized learning, personalized instruction, newest interest, old rhetoric, 2013. Again, this is from the National Ed Policy Center, and it declares that personalized instruction is the best model. It gives strategies for that and gives examples of how, and it says person-to-person instruction, tech-based and person-to-person shows the greatest. Well, what is tech-based and person-to-person? It's blended. Face-to-face and online, right, together, blended. So that is another reason that's one of my favorites. The RAND Corporation, same year, put out at this study, which I was crazy mad about, and that is an algebra course with tutoring software, and they showed 10% gains in student performance. And they had a really large sample too. So I was super excited about that. 8 percentile points, sorry. I always round that up, but 8 percentile points. Then WestEd did a study in 2014 that was specific to math, ST math in particular, which some of you guys have used that. Dreambox has since done a study. Harvard did that study, and there were really positive outcomes there. And then this last study, Supporting Student Success Through Time and Technology, again, is a national center, and it is looking at blended learning and extended learning. Remember, that was the purpose of it at the beginning, was to extend the day. But this is mostly case studies. So this is mostly kind of what it could look like instead of kind of real data on outcomes. So now I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to share my, what am I going to share? I guess I'm going to share my desktop so that you can see the Blended Learning Handbook. Can you guys see that? Yes? Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Kristen, Tina, Kelly, Jordan. Thank you so much. So this is a handbook, 738 pages, I might add, of all, it's the compiled handbook of all the research around blended and online learning. And it starts out, edited by a really good friend of mine, Catherine Kennedy. I mentioned her earlier. It starts out with kind of background and historical perspective. Tom Clark has written in here about program evaluation. He's really good at that, and has helped me on several program evaluation projects. And then research on learning and learners. These are all of the current ones that we have right now on the books. This, by the way, was published in 2018. But when you look at some of these studies, you're going to see that they're not as recent as we would like. 2018 is probably the soonest you would expect anything to be published at this point, because you would hope that people would still be doing the research. The next one is research on teaching. So this whole section is on teaching and class size and K-12 online learning. But if you think about what's going on in online learning and what we're doing today with that flex model, and most predominantly in an online space, you can absolutely apply that research to it. The next is online and blended content domains. So what's going on in PE and science and social studies, etc., world languages. And then these are student support structures down here. You'll get access, by the way, to this link when you get this PowerPoint, that the slide links to the page. And then instructional design, you really, really need to pay attention to instructional design when you are building out online or blended. And then learning environments. And here's virtual reality and augmented reality learning environments. And, you know, one of the other sessions that I taught, I really talked about how, you know, we really need to think about those virtual environments and the augmented reality environments and how we can live in those today to make it more interactive for our kids, more engaging to our kids. It is different than what we're accustomed to, but our kids really get into it. And this is kind of about them and less about us. Mobile learning. Kathy Cavanaugh, awesome person. And then here's all around the world. So New Zealand, Singapore, Canada, Iceland. I don't think Australia is not in here, but there is some really good stuff going on in Western Australia with online learning. And then these are the emerging issues. And of course, personalized learning is called out as an emerging issue because we're still probably trying to figure it out. There's there's that competency. Remember I said that paper around blended, personalized, and competency. So we're still trying to kind of navigate that and see exactly what that could and should be looking at. So I'm going to stop share. No, I'm not, because I'm sharing my whole desktop. So I'm going to just go back to this and ring. Oh, come on now. I'm telling you, PowerPoint doesn't like me. But I'm actually at the applying to practice. So how are you applying research to your practice? And Marie, I think we have a poll set up for this. I think. Thank you, Marie. There's your links. And if you can activate the poll. Oh, this isn't the right poll. Sorry. Boom, boom, boom. There it is. So how are we applying research to practice in blended learning? And if you don't, this is just how you're interpreting blended learning. So give a little time on that poll. If you have a little bit of time, I could sing, I could play my music. I could not. Okay, let's see. There's only 38 people here, so let's see. Surely all of you have done it. I'm going to count. I'm going to count and see. Let's see what the poll results are, Marie. Oh. Okay, 17 people say it means I can do perfect. So 94% of you say you can do things more efficiently because you use technology, and hopefully this research is going to prove that for you. I think these are really good resources for you to have access to as you're beginning to design your programs. I want you to be able to reach out to me and let me know if there's any way you need me. And before I share my video with Mr. Collada, I want to tell you my email. I'm going to type it in. Hold on here. I'm going to type it in my deal. And this is how you get in touch with me. Great. Oh, Barb, you found a download? Stick it in the link. Stick the link to that download in here, because that is really a $200 book that book is. So if you found it free, I know it was published through Carnegie, so that might be where you found it. But then other people have turned it into a publish. It's electronic if it's that way. You cannot send it, by the way. You have to send the link. It's too big once you download it, but it's still really good. Yeah, Carnegie Mellon. Good job, Barb. All right, my friends, my 38 friends that hung in here with me. Let me introduce you to the pride of my life. The reason I was out for 1 whole year, out of the scenes. But I'm back. This is Ella, everybody. Say hello, Ella. Say hi. Say hey, Barb. Hey, Bernie. Say hey, Sarah. How are you doing? I know. Are you excited? She says Mommy's on webinars all the time. There's Constance and Sarah. Yeah. I know. I want her to be. Now, I will tell you, my friends, she doesn't have any screen time. 0. So Miss Technologist here doesn't let her daughter on the screen at all. Eek. Thank you, Barb. That's because Maddie did it. Barb says, thank you, you're color coordinated.
Oh.
Yes. Okay, Mommy's almost done. Thank you, Maddie. Yay. See, you guys got something. And I'll tell y'all, when ISTE got canceled, that was the #1 thing people said is, oh, we won't get to meet Ella. But you guys all got to meet Ella. So not like in real life, but in real life. Oh, Judy, the link to the handbook was posted. Barb posted that a little bit further up. Here, let me grab it and I'll repost it. And then it is also in the PowerPoint that you're going to get. The link is in the PowerPoint that you're going to get too. So let me share with you, before Marie takes it over, let me share with you a quick video from my good buddy, Richard Collada. Oh man, it's not going to let me show the video, y'all. Well, let me tell you what the video says, because PowerPoint has decided I can't operate it. Basically, ISTE has started, they've got a whole summer series going that they're offering, and it's ongoing professional development, and they have all of these people that have signed up to teach it, and many of them are authors, but most of them are practitioners. So they're all practicing teachers or practicing coaches that are offering professional development in the ISTE environment. So I don't think it only costs $20 to be a member of ISTE, I think is the deal they're giving right now. So if you want to know more about that, go to ISTE.org and I'll put that link in here. And all the information is on the ISTE website for how you can sign up for that professional development. It's really going to be awesome. So I hope you're able to make it. ISTE is in November in Anaheim. I'm going to be there. So I hope we're all able to be there. But I definitely hope to be able to see you all soon one day. I hope we can too, Dawn. I am available, by the way, through K20 Connect. So I put my email in. I'll bring it up now so you can see it. That's my email. That's my website. Sign up for the newsletter. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming out, including courses that are going to be offered through the University of North Alabama. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I can't tell you how much it means to me. When I had this idea with Christine, who is with Tech and Learning, both of us were like, do you think we can do it? And how many people do you think will come? We had 1,200 people, over 1,200 people sign up for it. And I think we've been engaged most of the day. So can't tell you how much it means. I do have a webcast coming up next week again. I'll stop sharing so that Marie can tell you all about that. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Wear a mask.
On behalf of our entire team, thank you for attending today's Tech and Learning Future-Proofing Your District Plan Conference. A special thank you to our sponsors, Catch On, Classcraft, FileWave, Global Teletherapy, GradeCam, Sanford Programs, and thank you to all of our association partners. Please join me in thanking our terrific speakers today, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us and spending this time together. And don't forget to register for next week's Tech and Learning Roundtable webinar on Wednesday, June 3rd. Join Dr. Kecia Ray as she speaks with district leaders about the security issues related to online learning, a school plan for next year, such as keeping data private, cybersecurity concerns, and monitoring online activity to make sure students are safe and content is appropriate. Please register by visiting www.techlearning.com/events. We look forward to getting together with you all again in person soon. Until then, stay safe and healthy.